Mr. Cole-Hamilton, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm very grateful to the Petitions Committee for securing time today for us to address something that for every one of the hundreds upon hundreds of women who are MESH survivors in this country, that is nothing short of a public health disaster. I'm very proud to add my voice to some incredible and passionate speeches this afternoon. I want to put on record my thanks too to Neil Finlay for the visit just described by Alison Johnson, where we and many members in this chamber met with MESH survivors, many in wheelchairs, all in abject pain. And this experience then prompted me to hold a members' debate just 2 weeks ago on the need for a national continence strategy, given that 80% of cases of incontinence can be alleviated with appropriate physiotherapy, but have in all too many cases led to the insertion of these potentially devastating implants using devices that, were they pharmaceutical in nature, may never even have made it out of trial phase. Now, I was contacted over the weekend by a constituent of mine called Kathy, and she's given me permission to share her story with you now. In 2010, after suffering some very mild issues with incontinence, Kathy was referred by her physiotherapist to a consultant who suggested that she could undergo a marvellous new procedure. Somewhat bewildered, Kathy was asked to sign a consent form right then and there, and she said it was like she was entering some kind of clinical trial, although it was never really spelled out to her quite like that. In fact, nothing was properly spelled out to her at all. And I think that speaks to the fact that if we credited these fully grown women with the facts about what was going to happen to them, they all might have made very different decisions. Despite being booked in for the more invasive tension-free vaginal transobturator implant, which is secured via spikes through the obturator muscle, Kathy received very little information other than it would cure her incontinence. When she awoke from surgery, she couldn't move. The nerve damage she had sustained in her obturator muscles radiated pain throughout her abdomen, her legs, and her back. So bad was her condition that when she was discharged, she would not allow her son to travel more than 30 miles an hour along the bypass. From 3 days after that, all the following week, with no let-up in the pain, she tried to call the hospital but never received a call back from either nursing staff or doctors, and to add insult to injury, and in the cruelest twist of irony, her incontinence worsened for a time. When she visited a doctor, she was told that the pain might be related to the fact she'd stopped smoking at the time of her operation, or she should perhaps try cutting fat out of her diet as a means of helping. But at no point did any medical professional suggest that there could be a physical problem with the mesh implant. All told, Kathy went a full 5 years of trying to cope with abject pain before the cause was identified as being the mesh implant. A routine checkup with her gynecologist revealed that the tape was in far too tight on the right-hand side, and as such was constantly tearing at her obturator muscle. On seeking the advice of her surgeon, she received the devastating news that because her tissue had grown around the implant, it could not be removed without further significant nerve damage. Had someone taken her call at the hospital in the days after her operation, a reversal or correction could have been performed. Imagine her horror at receiving this news, considering also that at the time of her surgery, like several others, had been told that the mesh plastic would simply melt away over time. Once the cause of the pain was identified as the physical obstruction within her, she was heavily medicated with gabapentin, and this, as always, had a very soporific effect on her, which indeed forced her to retire from the job she loved way before she planned to. Kathy's implant has had a significant impact on her mobility, on her intimacy with her partner, and on her mental health. For Kathy, the mesh implant has devastated her quality of life, and she is left with the Hobson's choice of making do or having it removed with potentially far greater nerve damage and resultant pain. As I stated at the top of my remarks, she felt rushed into that procedure. She wasn't clear of her options, and she had the impression that given the lack of understanding about possible side effects among the clinicians who tended to her, that she was part of some kind of clinical trial. She's far from alone in feeling like this, and indeed I was contacted by another constituent yesterday called Tress, who underwent a similar procedure, but for a prolapse this time, resulting from a hernia in 2010. She's allowed me to read a very brief passage from the message she sent me as a message to you this afternoon. I feel it was an unnecessary operation, but was bullied into having it, being told it was my last option. I was not informed of the risks. My life has changed. I suffer from chronic pain as well as recurring infections, and I have to have antibiotics in the house at all times. I have been for investigations, but was told my mesh was safe. No, it's not safe. No mesh is safe. And we have lost several lovely ladies through having a mesh fitted. It is the human cost in Tress's words which underscore this as a public health disaster. At the end of October, the world lost Christina Lynn Bracek, a formidable Canadian mesh campaigner, to sepsis for the infection she has sustained relating to her mesh implant. She is part of an increasing death toll, and as such, I would like to add my voice calling for this petition to be kept open, for a full and frank assessment of the final review, which I think we can see has cross-party consensus as now being unsafe, and for a policy response which protects patients in absolute terms from the horrors of mesh implant side effects with a full and continuing moratorium. Thank you.